Gun fam, what's up? It's the Gun Brother. Thank you for tuning in. And today, let's talk about South Carolina's constitutional carry. We kind of talk about constitutional carry in general, but we're going to talk about South Carolina's constitutional carry. A couple of points I want to point out, and one thing they added in the bill that I don't think any other constitutional carry state has done that I personally or professionally applaud. Let's get into it. All right, so constitutional carry. South Carolina is now the 29th state to pass constitutional carry. I think it still has to go to at the time of this recording, still has to go to the governor's desk to be signed. More than likely that will be the case. And it is called South Carolina Constitutional Carry Second Amendment Preservation Act of 2024. So that's a great title. And it's going to be where's the bill number? H3594. So let's get into it. And the first thing I want to talk about, and I just want to point out a couple of things. I'm not going to go through the whole bill, but this is important because some things have changed. Number one is South Carolina did not issue non-resident concealed carry permits unless the non-resident owned property in South Carolina. As you know, I'm in the DC area, and a lot of us come down there to vacation, especially a lot of the riders go down to Myrtle Beach every year, and they would always say, can I get my permit for South Carolina? And I always had to tell them, no, not unless you own property in South Carolina, because South Carolina did not have that arrangement for non-residents. So this opens it up to everybody. So now, if you go down for vacation, you can constitutionally carry in South Carolina without having to have a permit. So that's one big thing, and it's very important to understand that when you do constitutional carry, you have to understand the laws of that state. Just because you can carry without a permit does not mean you don't have to abide by their laws. So that's why it's very important to understand this. Myrtle Beach or Bike Week is coming up, I should say. And some people may get a hold of this and say, okay, now I can carry all the way down the coast and they're good, but you have to understand the laws of that state. So I just want to point out a couple of things. And then, like I said, this big thing at the end, which impressed me, and I think it's a great idea. So let's talk about it. First, prohibited places. It's unlawful for a person, whether or not the person has a permit or not, for anyone to carry about the person any handgun, whether concealed or not, unless otherwise specifically authorized. And two, law enforcement or correctional detentional facility. And I'm going to skim through these. You can read them. They'll be on the screen. Courthouse, courtroom, polling places, office of business meeting of government governing body of a county, public district, municipality, or special purpose district, school, which is pretty much across the board in every state, daycare facility or preschool facility, place where carrying firearms is prohibited by federal law, and that's any federal building or federal lands or anything like that. Church or other established religious sanctuary. With the shooting in Houston before, I mean, churches are gun-free zones that will, if they don't have security, they're always going to be susceptible to active threat attacks. Hospitals, residence or dwelling of another without the permission of the person or owner. Same thing with the church. If you have a permission from them, you can carry. And then this last one is a theme. This is why I wanted to point it out. This is very important because it's a theme throughout, and they explain it in each section. A place clearly marked with a sign prohibiting the carrying of a concealed weapon on the premises in compliance with section 23-31-235. Okay, so in other words, this has always been a hot topic. It's an ongoing question online. Do I have to comply with a sign that a store has put up saying I can't conceal carry in that establishment? And in jurisdictions where those signs do not have the backing of law, that's just store policy. They can ask you to leave if they do discover you're concealed carrying or carrying openly. If you're concealed, they should not. And they can ask you to leave, and they can trespass you if you don't leave. If the signs have the backing of law, then you're going to be subject to the penalties of what the law says. And even for this, It says a person who violates a provision of this item, whether the violation is willful or not, only may be charged with the violation of section 1611-620 and must not be charged with or penalized for a violation of this subsection. Okay, so that is important to know that you can be charged for this, and we will talk about what the charges are in a minute. Here are your violations. A person violating the provisions of section 16-23-20 is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction must not be fined more than $1,000 or in prison not more than a year or both for a first offense. Second offense, a misdemeanor and upon conviction must be in prison not more than 3 years for a second offense. 3, a felony and upon conviction must be in prison not more than 5 years for a third or subsequent offense. So if you continue to violate those, violate and get caught and convicted, those signs do hold the weight of law, and those penalties are pretty severe. All right. Another amendment that is in place. So this part of the code was amended to say, I don't know what it said previously, but a person convicted of knowingly carrying a firearm into a business which sells alcoholic liquor, beer, or wine for consumption on the premises is guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction must be fined not more than $2,000 or in prison not more than 2 years or both. However, we can go to section B, and it does say this section does not apply to a person otherwise lawfully carrying a firearm who does not consume alcoholic liquor, beer, or wine while carrying the concealable weapon on the business's premises. So as long as you don't drink, you're good. But the reason I wanted to point that out, because like I told you, this is a theme that goes on throughout this document. A property owner, holder, or lease interest, or operator of a business may prohibit the carrying of concealable weapons into the business by posting a no concealable weapons allowed sign in compliance with 23-31-235. A person who carries a concealable weapon into a business with a sign posted in compliance with it may be charged with a violation of subsection A. Okay, so just so you know, like I said, it had those signs in South Carolina. I don't know what it was previously. They do now have the backing of law. Goes on to say, property owner, holder, or lease interest or operator, blah, 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 that request that a person carrying a concealable weapon leave the business premises or any portion of the premises, or request that a person carrying a concealable weapon remove the concealable weapon from the business's premises or any portion of the premises. A person carrying a concealable weapon who refuses to leave a business premises or portion of the premises when requested, or refuses to remove the concealable weapon from a business when requested, may be charged with a violation of subsection A. So y'all want to make videos and talk about your rights being violated and all that? Look, the back of the law is it's in code now. So I wouldn't advise it. All right. So going back a little bit, but this section says a permit issued pursuant to this section does not authorize a permit holder to carry a concealed weapon into any of the places listed back in 1623-20, except as provided in 1623-20. A person who willfully violates a provision of this subsection may be charged with the violation of section 1623-20, and in addition to those penalties provided in 1623-20, at the discretion of the court, you can get your permit revoked for up to 5 years. So again, just illustrating that these are in place, and that's the biggest part is, again, just the signs having the backing of law. Now here's the part that grants you your constitutional carry. A permit issued pursuant to this article is not required for a person carrying a self-defense device generally considered to be non-lethal, carrying a concealable weapon in a manner not prohibited by law. The availability of a permit to carry a concealable weapon under this section must not be construed to prohibit permitless transport or carrying of a firearm in a vehicle or on or about one's person, whether openly or concealed, loaded or unloaded, in a manner not prohibited by law. So that's what gives you your permitless carry. You do not have to have a permit to carry a concealed firearm, an open firearm, whether it's loaded, or openly carry a firearm, whether it's loaded or unloaded. There it is. That's the section that gives you all of that. Now, this is where the twist comes in. You'll see. Constitutional carry, the ability to exercise your constitutional right without interference from the government. You can carry a firearm, you can bear arms without a permit, without a training requirement, without anything. You are allowed to carry your firearm. I have one issue with constitutional carry. Of course, I believe it's everyone's right and everyone should be able to do it as long as they're not prohibited otherwise. However, the only thing that ever bothered me was no training requirement. I have seen the horrors of people that aren't trained with firearms, the questions that people ask, the things that people do. Firearms is not something that you feel your way through and get through with by trial and error, because error can result in somebody being injured or killed. My personal beef with constitutional carry has always been the training component. Even people with training make mistakes, so there's no way that you should be able to, I don't think, you should be able to do it without some sort of training. So, hear this part out. They kind of incentivized getting a permit. So let's talk about this. So a person convicted of committing or attempting to commit a crime involving a concealable weapon is in violation of an offense listed in Chapter 23, Title 16, or Section 1011-320, must be in prison not to exceed 3 years. A term of imprisonment imposed for violating this section must be served consecutively to any term of imprisonment imposed for the underlying offense and may not exceed the actual sentence imposed for the underlying offense. But when we get to B, it says, this section does not apply to a person with a valid permit to carry a concealable weapon, provided that the permit was valid at the time the crime was committed. So if you have your permit, your sentence will be less severe than somebody without a permit. So depending on what the crime was, even if you thought it was self-defense and it turns out to not be self-defense, in other words, you lose in that case and don't have a permit, your penalties can be more severe. That's kind of an incentive to still get your permit. And the other things that come along with that are reciprocity with other states and things like that. Although we have 29, this will be 29 states that have concealed carry, that still leaves a little less than half the country that you would need to have reciprocity or still have to have a permit for. And this is where we come to what I consider the jewel of this document. The State Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, shall provide a statewide concealed weapon permit training course that satisfies the proof of training requirement for the issuance of a concealed carry permit. So the state must provide a course for you to take. SLED may not charge participants a fee of any kind for the concealed weapon permit training course provided for in this subsection. SLED may contract with private certified concealed weapons permit training class instructors or local law enforcement to provide the course for SLED, or they may provide it themselves. Training course must be offered in every county in South Carolina at least twice a month, and if the demand exceeds the capacity of the training course in any county, SLED shall provide additional classes until there exists a sufficient number of classes offered at least twice a month to meet the demand for training in each respective county. So in other words, the training is free. Go get it, get your permit. That way, if something was to happen, you would have lesser penalties. You are safer with your firearm. You've had your training. You also get the reciprocity with other states with having your permit, and you did not have to pay for it. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great answer to the question of how can training be incorporated into getting your permit without further financial burden to the citizen. And I've had this argument with a lot of people, and people are saying you shouldn't have to jump through any hoops to exercise your rights, and I 100% get that, but I'm just talking about from the aspect of safety. And I think that's a good idea coming out of South Carolina. And I don't know if you're in a constitutional carry state and they have something like that in place, put it in the comments, because I didn't know. This is the first time that I've heard of it. Again, I think it's an excellent idea. Otherwise, if you guys have anything else to say or any other ideas, please put it in the comments. Like and subscribe, as I always say to any 2A content creator that you like, make sure you like and subscribe and share their videos so the 2A content can keep going, because they are trying to put a stranglehold on it. And with that being said, the Gun Brothers out. I will talk to you guys soon. Protect yourselves.